見事リーグ制覇を成し遂げた今のお気持ちをお聞かせください。
信じられない。
レフトへ伸びていくか、下がって狙った、見上げた、デビッド・マキノンホームラン。
Welcome back to Pacific Swings. My name is Jasper Spanjard. I'm a documentary filmmaker, journalist, and a whole bunch of other things.
And I'm still Dave McKinnon, former Los Angeles Angels first baseman, NPB Defensive Award winner at first base for being awesome, and KBO All-Star. What did I do to deserve that type of intro today, Jasper?
Yeah, I just feel like you got to throw you a bone every now and then. Today we're talking to someone with a truly unique perspective in baseball. His name is Trey Hillman, who's the only person to manage teams in all three major leagues, so MLB, NPB, and KBO. He managed the Hokkaido Nippon-Ham Fighters from 2003 to 2007, won the Japan Series in 2006, then came back to manage the Kansas City Royals, later went to Korea where he also won the Korean Series. Like, basically all this guy does is win.
Gosh. I mean, he did everything at like the highest level, that sounds like my high school resume, but that's crazy. But anyway, he wins championships in both Japan, Korea, also managed Yu Darvish during his development years, and has been a coach with the Dodgers, Yankees, Astros, Marlins, in the MLB.
Yeah, and I think what makes this conversation interesting is that Trey can compare how teams are built, how players are developed, and how management basically works across all these different baseball cultures.
And he famously shouted, I'm probably going to get this wrong, Shinjjo. Unbelievable.
You gotta get it out there. Come on.
I was trying, dude. I was trying, okay?
Was that
but it's
you
hard.
trying? Really?
Shinji, I don't know if it's rare or not, or rare Ray. I don't know. But anyway, we'll bring him on.
D.
Anyway, Trey, welcome to Pacific Swings. Can you shout that out real quick so we can get it?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's Shinjjo. It's a soft
There it
D.
is.
Shinjjo.
See, that sounds like someone
That's
who
4
knows the
years.
language.
That's how many years is that in Japan?
5, but
5 years. That's 5 years in Japan.
Continued to work with them and still go to spring training with them. So, let's see, I picked that up in 2023 when I started my consulting business. And so I've been over the last 3 springs with the Fighters.
Well, let's dive straight into this. So can we give you, I know you personally, but most people don't know you personally. Most people know you as the legend, the coach, manager that wins stuff over in Japan and Korea. What are you like? What's your pet peeves? What's your favorite thing to do on the weekends? Who is Trey Hillman?
Well, I'd have to start that out by saying I appreciate the introduction, but I want everybody to remember at the onset that this is the last thing I said in my exit at a big banquet in Korea after the championship. And we had all of the dignitaries, the president and the CEO and all the wives, and of course all the staff and the players and support staff, all their wives. I said, if you guys don't remember anything in the last 2 years that we put together, all of us put together, I would appreciate it if you would remember this. Managers manage, coaches coach, players win championships. So the very nice intro that you guys gave me goes back to the players, and really God's timing. After my Kansas City managerial days, 08 through part of 10, I really didn't have any desire to manage anymore for some of the things you guys and I already talked about, or you mentioned briefly on air or off the air. So, but God had a different plan, and really the culmination of the blessings that I've had in the game of baseball been really God's blessings, and trying to listen where he wants me and my family to go. Japan was no doubt a God thing. It was wonderful. I've worked for 10 different teams domestically and internationally, and if you count winter ball in Venezuela, that would be 11. Tried to do it, tried to be the God and decide what I was going to do and when I was going to get there, and quickly found out back in development days with the Yankees that I just needed to give it to God. A lot of blessings. I got a great family. I've got a wife. She's got 3 degrees, one of them which is in her master's in counseling, and trust me, I've used that one many, many times. Got 2 wonderful kids that are grown now. I've got a 32-year-old son and a almost 29-year-old daughter, and told her whole life, all men are pigs, but baseball men are piggier. Don't ever date one. So she married one. She's married to Brett Phillips, and they blessed us with our first granddaughter, little Mila, 10.5 months ago. I live in Central Texas. I have a consulting business now. Gave my major league pension, well deserved, to my wife, and we bought a little ranch. And I get out to the ranch and do a lot of work out there. And we live on 6 acres, so there's something always to do out on our 6 acres where our primary residence is, and just lots of blessings. We're very involved with our church. They were crazy enough to ask me to be on the elder board, so I've been getting to do that for the past couple of years, and just trying to grow, through that path of sanctification, and try to be better, and try to learn to serve better, and love people for where the good Lord's got them, not where I think they should be.
Mhm.
Well, I was about to ask you what sort of lessons you could give us that maybe baseball have taught you or life has have taught you, but you've just already given us quite a lot there. And it's really cool to hear that you're outside a lot, because I think that's something a lot of people forget to do. If you have a bit of land, you gotta enjoy it, and gotta make sure. Well, it's a lot of work. Like, don't get me wrong, I know it's a lot of work, but it's
So much work.
it's nice to be outside, though, I'd imagine.
It is. It's very satisfying and gratifying. Um, but Jasper, you hit on a key thing, and I share this because I still enjoy doing. Most of the time, it's really self-deprecating stories, with telling people about the thousands and thousands of mistakes have made and tried to learn from, especially with my consulting business, with team building in baseball, but also outside of baseball with speaking engagements. Anytime I give myself my check on whether or not I'm doing a good job of leadership, the first thing that pops into my mind is to serve. I think the best servants are the best leaders. And I love the saying, if you really want to lead, don't get out in front of the group that you're leading. Make sure you're behind them so you know which direction to lead them and to serve for them from behind. But my 3 paradigms that I always go back to are, number 1 is integrity, to simply tell the truth. And I don't understand people that have a difficult time with that. I know it can be uncomfortable, but the truth is very important when you're leading. So that's check number 1. Number 2 is timing and presentation. And sometimes leaders don't have the flexibility of the best timing because sometimes messages are urgent, but we always have the ability to make sure our presentation is modeled in a way that is acceptable to the recipient or the group. Groups are more difficult, but I need my message and my presentation to fit your personality if you're the one that I'm trying to help. And then the third thing is have a conversation rather than a confrontation. And trust me, when I was blessed by God to get a managerial job at the tender age of 27, I was very undeserving of that. And I pulled that managerial trump card out of my back pocket a lot. Do this because I'm the manager and I say so. So that's not really the way to start off a good conversation. That's more of a confrontational approach, and that's not real good for the receiver. So that's just sharing with you. Those are my 3 check systems that I got to look in the mirror and say, Trey, are you doing your job the right way? Even in the consulting business, I'm trying to help lead people into being better team builders and better leaders.
I think it's a very sort of suitable thing to do, because I do think that that's lacking in a lot of sports. Whether that's like, we obviously talk a lot about the setting in Korea and Japan, and obviously we perhaps, coming from a different background, we don't get as much of a grasp on leadership there as probably the Japanese or Korean guys do. I know Dave, spent his years there and was able to see leadership firsthand there, but it's completely different, obviously, than what we're used to in other areas of the sporting world. But from what I can see, specifically in Europe and in the US, it does feel like there's a lot of managers just really I don't know, struggling their way through seasons where, you've got the fan pressure maybe after 3 or 4 bad results, fans start calling for a manager's head. I know specifically in European football, that happens quite a lot. And it's like, you got to stay even keeled and you got to believe in your own process. But what if you don't get, enough time to really develop that process and develop those learnings into something where you feel like you can have a sustainable career as a leader, right? And how do you sort of feel about that? Is there more pressure now than ever on managers?
Yeah, I think there is, because I think it's the evolution of all the different venues that get to voice their opinions, whether they're syndicated or whether they're unsyndicated. I mean, with what's happened with social media, it doesn't do anything but compound. And I'm not being judgy on anybody that does social
You can be
media.
judgy. It's fine.
No.
It's our podcast. You can be judgy.
I think that there are a lot of great things that come from social media, but unfortunately there's a lot of negativity with that. And it's almost impossible when you're in the limelight of a powerful position in the sporting world, especially. It's basically impossible to not at least hear. I'll use myself as an example. I don't do any social media, but I know a lot of people that do, and they'll send me things. Sometimes I can click on it. Most of the time it's spiritual building, Christ-based stuff, but a lot of times it's just worldly things that people think are interesting and might matter. So, I always go the same thing I've told our kids growing up is trash in, trash out. You gotta be careful what you take in. If you take in too much trash, inevitably trash is going to come out. And so I think we just all need to really check our filter systems, and those in high places with managerial jobs, whether it's in Europe or whether it's in Japan or whether it's in the United States or Australia. Most of the pressure, when I look back on it, most of the pressure was self-induced. But the reason that it was self-induced was because of some of the trash that I allowed to enter, rather than just letting it go in one ear and right out the other. And my training ground with the New York Yankees for 13 years as a development guy and working my way up the ladder as a manager with that organization, it was monumental value for me, because it took me from being more often than not sensitive in my early years and all the second guessing that can go on to having a lot thicker skin and learning pretty quickly to laugh at myself and give myself a little bit of balance. And openly, and sometimes too often, I was accused of being too transparent sometimes to my players. When I screw up, I just say, hey, you know what? Let's do a redo. It's like when I do projects, my dad gets worried. I got my 91-year-old dad's here in Central Texas with me right now. He says, son, man, you worked so hard on this ranch, and he's seen, the improvements over the last 5 years and the things that I've built out there and the things that we've improved. And he said, I worry about you with the heavy equipment and chainsawing, and you're out there by yourself. I said, Dad, don't worry about it. I always get my 2 best friends out here with me. And he goes, well, I didn't know you were taking 2 best buddies out there with you all the time. Who is that? And I said, oh, that's Pete and Repeat. Dad, I have to redo stuff all the time. I'll do a project and brand new at building something, and I'll go, yeah, okay, that's going to fall down. That's not good. Better take that apart. Come here, Pete. Help me do it. Now, Pete, Repeat, come on over. Let's do this again. Let's do it better.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and a lot of leaders, I mean, if they would just admit that 2 of their best buddies, hopefully Repeat's on the left because I'm right-handed. You got Pete right here. He's your buddy, and if you do something good, you go, all right, thanks, Pete. And over here on the left side, no, Repeat, come on in, buddy.
Obviously, you're with the Yankees for a while, and you ended up being the director of player development with Texas. Then the phone rings, so the Pacific Swing happens in 2003. Gosh, 2003, man. I was 9 years old. I was about to start my Little League career.
Thanks for that, Dave. Appreciate.
I was 8, so it's not going to get better. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I was an avid Fighters fan at the time. If that makes you feel any better.
Nice.
So,
I like that.
But anyway, the Fighters from the MPB call how did it all go down? What was that call like? How like
Yeah, that's a lot of people don't know the history. It's a great question. I'll try to give you the condensed version. So the Rangers hired me away in the off season after 2001. I'd just finished 3 years of managing the AAA team in Columbus, Ohio. I was loving this job. I had a two-part job. I was minor league director, but I was also the field coordinator. So I was in uniform every day. Right here where I'm sitting right now in my upstairs office, this was my home base. I was flying out of Austin. I'd drive up to Arlington if they needed me up there, but I wasn't really involved at the major league level. So I was hitting the affiliates as much as I could, and I'd signed a 2-year deal for 2002 and 2003. And my boss was a wonderful executive vice president of player development and scouting, Grady Fusong, who's still working with the A's. And Grady was just so incredibly intelligent and smart and a great evaluator. I learned so many things from him. So I'm digging this new job. And it was June the 22nd of 2002 in my first year. Right underneath us here, my sweet wife, Maria, and I are standing in the kitchen and my phone rings, and it was a gentleman named Toshi Shimada from Japan. And I was scheduled for a flight to Oklahoma City the next morning, and Grady and I were hooking up with our AAA team. And he just blurted it out. He said, "Hey, we want you to come and manage over in Japan this next season." So I'm sitting here thinking about the dynamics, and my heart immediately goes out to their now manager. I had no idea who it was. I didn't know their staff. I didn't really follow the NPB. And I'm thinking, dang, man, they're going to fire this guy. And they're picking their manager on June 22nd. So
That's
long
early.
story.
yeah, that's
so,
super.
Yes, well, I got fired May 13th from the Kansas City Royals.
Never
Yeah, I
mind.
got-
Never mind.
I mean, I got fired in July, so
Yeah, but anyhow, I mean, so it evolved from there. I told him, I said, "Hey, time out, Tosh." And I'd known the Fighters. We had a working agreement with them with the Yankees, and they would send 2 to 3 players over every fall. And I just did what I thought was the right thing to do. I would try to treat them, as kindly as I could for being out of their country, and take them to places in Tampa and have a meal with them. Just spend time. Time is such a precious thing to try to spend with people. So that helped me bond. But they did their due diligence. They watched my career over the course of our association with Nippon-Ham with the Yankees, and they saw that my career was moving forward, and then the 4 World Series championships didn't hurt any either, with 96, 98, 99, and 2000, and being a part of the development, the core 4 guys. And so they made the appropriate calls, got permission. And at that time, the Texas Rangers were planning on continuing on with Jerry Narron, who was their manager. Well, that started June 22nd. By August the 15th, I had an agreement in principle, which is like warp speed for Japan to come to an agreement of something of that magnitude. I was going to become their first ever foreign employee. And not only that, but
Manager.
to be the manager.
yeah.
So it went warp speed, and everybody had to keep it tight-lipped. And by the end of it, I'm in instructional ball in September, running the first camp at the Surprise Complex shared by the Texas Rangers and Kansas City Royals. Texas side was done first. I'm running the first camp ever as the minor league director there, and they fly me to Arlington, and I had a 8-hour pseudo interview with John Hart, the GM, and Tom Hicks, the owner of the Texas Rangers, and they were asking me to be their manager. And I said, "Man, I've got this deal in place."
Gosh, yeah.
No
So
way.
that was a pressure packed. I mean, I grew up 2 miles from the stadium. That's my hometown. So
Yeah.
I grew up out there at that ballpark. So that was interesting times, but I'd already told Japan that I would come, and that was a character issue for me. And the Rangers could not get permission from Nippon-Ham to keep their own current employee. So it was a very strange dynamic. They sent it through Major League Baseball legal channels. They sent it through Southwest Sports Group, the LLC of the Texas Rangers, and the answers came back the same. You can't touch this guy. He's got an agreement in principle. Although I had not signed my official contract, they said you can't touch him for next year. He's their property. So I went to Japan.
That's also a moral thing too. I mean, I totally get that. Because when I was about to sign in, Japan, a Korean team came in and offered, but I had already verbally agreed, and it was a done deal in my head. You know, like there was no paper sign, there was no nothing. There's a done deal. I mean, could you have been kind of a jerk and done that? Yeah, but I wouldn't have felt right about changing my word because there's a couple more dollars thrown.
Yeah, and you and I both know people, Dave, that have done that. We won't mention names, but
for sure.
I mean, there's a couple of really big name guys that did that. Actually, one that did it the same year that I went to Japan, and he didn't.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a more, like Dave said, and I think, Trey, like you said too, it's sort of a character thing, right? But was there anything, I mean, you just said it, you grew up a few miles away from that stadium. Is there a sort of moment of hesitancy on your end where you go, maybe there's a loophole I can exploit? Or is it for you, is it like, no, I've agreed to this, this is what I'm going to do? Or what were those? That must have been an interesting time to be Trey Hillman.
Yeah, what was like the good Trey and the bad Trey, you know? What was that battle happening?
What were Pete and Repeat saying to you?
Yeah, the easy thing was, wow, I wouldn't have to move. I'd be living back in my hometown 3 hours away from our home now. And my mom and dad still lived 2.5 miles away from the stadium. One of my sisters in the area, tons of friends along with family, and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. But I felt God's tugging of, honestly, with, hey, this is all God driven for them to come after you in the first place. And I've made too many mistakes, as I mentioned earlier, trying to be the God and not listen to God's Holy Spirit and leading me and directing me where he wanted me to go. The only way that I would have done it, and I made this decision, counseling with my wife and talking to my parents, the only way that I would have changed my mind is if Nippon-Ham had granted their blessing and said, hey, okay, yeah, it's going to be pretty cool. We'll let you be the manager of your hometown team. Actually, they said just the opposite, and they apologized. They said, Trey, this is a monumental thing for us to hire a foreign manager. And our preparation and our plans from the time that we had reached a agreement in principle, it was approximately August the 15th to mid-September, a month, their plans had gone too far, and nobody had cracked on either side of the ocean. I'd kept it quiet here. The Rangers kept it quiet. But there were still things leaking in the media that I was...
Their media is just so good. They get everything right. Golly.
Well, it was actually Dallas-Fort Worth media put out a big expose article of Trey Hillman leading candidate. They're going to try to keep their own, and they didn't have any of the Japan info.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant the Japan info.
Well, the fighters were on top of that. They called me it was like 5 o'clock in the morning at the complex in Surprise, and I got a call from Japan, and I went, uh-oh, here we go.
Yeah.
One of the executives with the Rangers assistant general manager had called and asked explicitly for permission to keep me, and they denied it. And then the article came out, and they called and said, Trey, what's going on? I said, Tosh, do you trust me? And he said, yes, I do. I said, I told you I would come to Japan. I'll come to Japan. I said, now I'm going to ask you this one time. Do you grant me permission and y'all's blessings for me to stay and be the Texas Rangers manager? And he said, I apologize, but he said, we've gone too far. We can't do that. We need you. I said, okay, then I'll be there to sign my contract after I get finished with my responsibilities. And the Rangers graciously let me out of my second year contract. And during that interview, Tom Hicks asked me if I had any recommendations if I couldn't stay, if they couldn't get it done. I said, well, actually, I do, and he's available. And I recommended Buck Showalter. That's who they ended up hiring.
That's not a bad hire either.
No, Buck is a brilliant man, and I've got incredible respect for him. And yeah, he's a worthy managerial candidate for anybody that wants him. I don't care how old he is. I think he's only a couple of years older than me, but he knows a lot of baseball, and he's an exceptionally good leader.
Now though, let's pivot to that moment where you embark on a journey to Japan. How much research did you sort of do on the MPB before you get on that plane, or what was going through your mind at that time?
I thought it was really important to go to the core and learn about the country culturally. So actually, I read all the way back to its Edo, the Edo period, back to the samurai, and just how the country had come into form and the history of it. I didn't read nearly as much baseball history rather than the introduction through the United States of touring teams back in the mid-1900s going to Japan, and how welcome and nationally accepted the game had become over there, and then also how revered it was. And with the exception of sumo matches happening 2 times a year, it was their national pastime, and it was just incredibly popular. I watched some video stuff. I talked to a couple of people that had played over there. Actually, the next morning after I got the call, June 22nd, June 23rd, I was in Oklahoma City, and our AAA pitching coach at the time, Lee Tunnell, had played in Japan. So I went straight to him and said, dude, this is what's cooking, and I got to talk to Grady about this today. And what do you got? And he goes, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. And this is definitely a God thing, but I was throwing BP for the AAA team. Lee was out in the bullpen, and we had already talked in depth, and I had yet to talk to Grady about it, but I'm throwing batting practice, and over the loudspeaker, over the PA system while I'm throwing BP is, I'm turning Japanese. Oh, yes, I'm turning Japanese. I really think so. And I turned around and I yelled out to the bullpen in left field. I said, Lee. And he goes, unbelievable. And all the players are going, Trey, keep throwing BP. What's going on?
Yeah, what are you doing, Trey?
That's hilarious.
That's
so that wasn't anybody pranking you or anything? That was just straight up?
No, that was just straight up what they were playing while I was
funny.
throwing BP.
Yeah, you gotta take the signals when you can get them, because that feels outwardly. But I mean, when you eventually do go, you actually you get on a plane, you go to Japan. I presume you land. I don't know where you land first. You land in Tokyo probably before you.
Yeah.
Any big nerves going on, or is this for you? It's like I sort of know what I'm getting into.
You never know when you go to that different of a culture. You never really know. And I think I had a pretty good sense of that. I wanted to try to be as aware as I could and learn as much as I could as quickly as I could. And at the same time, I was blessed with, and I wouldn't have done it without the autonomy that I had, because I asked specifically what it was they wanted. I said, do you guys need a mascot to come over and kiss babies and shake hands and sign autographs, or are you wanting to do what my passion is? And they said, no, they were very explicit. They said, we want you to come and put in a championship caliber system that would be effective beyond your years here, and teach us how to do it and what you've learned in your experience through development and championships with the New York Yankees. And I said, okay. Well, then I had to start talking specifics. So I had a list of a lot of questions. And I was gifted with a lot of autonomy, which I needed. But there was a tremendous amount of trust both ways, probably more so them. I was in their country than it was trust by me. I just told them, I said, look, this is going to be a combination of West meeting East in the East, and trying to come up with the best plan to develop players and win at the highest level as quickly as we can. So I adhered to that all 5 years, and it was funny. I was just explaining to somebody the other day in a team building conversation. I said, I had to remind my American coaches all the time, we're going to lose some battles. You're going to have to trust me with discernment to pick those battles that I'm willing to lose, or fight really hard to win those battles that I know are going to help us win the war. And that's the way that I framed it all the time. We wanted to win the war, and ultimately we did. We put in a much better system, and they still got components of that in to this day. Communication's better. Their relations with their players is better. And I think, honestly, what we were able to do together, it's not Trey Hillman did this, what we were able to do as an organization, it's permeated the other 11 teams in the league, because it's encouraged them to take a chance, maybe a little bit outside of their Japanese cultural comfort level, to gain better fan bases and get more personal with their fan bases.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think the MPB has definitely changed in the years that I've watched it now. It's sort of continuously changing. I do feel like MPB fans, and specifically those listening to our podcast, they always seem to be a bit sort of worried about the fact that MPB could become more American, so to speak. I know Dave and I have seen quite a few of those comments online, and I get it to a degree. I get to a degree why you want to shy away from certain concepts or aspects of the American game that feel like they don't bring the same integrity to the game of baseball as perhaps the Japanese way would do it. But for you, though, you sort of come there with your American background and you start implementing ideas that are fundamentally American. How do you sort of, I mean, we don't mean to make this like a purely leadership conceptual podcast, but how do you sort of make sure that there's enough buy-in? Because if the players don't buy into your concepts, I mean, you're doomed for failure, right? You've got absolutely no chance. So how do you make sure there is that sort of initial level of buy-in, at least from the players' part?
Well, you have to be able to back up what you're talking about, and it has to work. So one thing specifically, and it's the timing of this podcast is perfect, because just 2 weeks ago, we hosted 2 Japanese gentlemen here at my house in Texas. One of them a dear friend of mine, and we worked together. He was one of the marketing directors and promoters for the Fighters. Now, my first year, we were the redheaded stepchild team, and our last year in Tokyo, we shared the Tokyo Dome with the Tokyo Giants, and they would pack the house of 38,000 per night and pack the Tokyo Dome, and then we would come back from a road trip and we would have our 6-game homestand, and we would get 4,000 to 5,000 people at our games. Well, that's one of the reasons that I was hardline. I've never had an agent, so I've always done all my own contracts. So never thought that I was worthy of one, to be honest with you. But I fought hard for a 2-year deal, and I just simply told them on the front end, I don't know of anybody that's good enough to do what you're asking in 1 year, but I think we can start getting it rolling if you give me a couple of years. And I said, if you guys don't like what I'm doing, you can fire me after the first year, but you're going to pay me for 2 in making the commitment to bring my family to the other side of the world, because I wouldn't do it without my family. The other thing the Fighters were unbelievable about, I also told them I wouldn't suppress my faith. I said, I won't shove my Jesus down anybody's throat, but if people want to know what I believe, I have to be freed up to be able to share that. So the people still to this day, the people that I worked with the Fighters were incredible. But back to the marketability, once we got to Hokkaido in that second year, they started asking me, and I didn't have the autonomy with any of the marketing or any of the promotions. But I started getting asked by the scouting department, will you meet with our scouts and help educate them? Will you meet with our promotional people and give your thoughts and your ideas about promo and marketability? And now we're on an island where they've never had their own team.
Yeah.
Well, Hideki Ikeda is dear friend that was here 2 weeks ago and brought a collegiate coach of 35 years old, Shige-san. And I told EK, I said, I got a great promo and it'll work. And he goes, what? What are we going to do? And I said, well, on opening day at the Sapporo Dome, we will, at every gate, have 3 to 4 players to greet the fans as they open the gates. In full uniform, we'll adjust our work day and we'll get the work day done. Then we'll come up and we'll be on the mezzanine level at the entry gates. And he goes, oh my gosh, are you crazy? We'll have to have all kinds of security. I said, we'll be fine. I promise. They'll be so stunned that anybody had the gumption to do this in Japan. Well, the players were extremely nervous about it, and our player rep came to me and he sat down in my office. He very, very respectfully, as Japanese players do, approached the manager, and he told me, he said, we're afraid nobody's going to show up. And I said, Iwamoto-san, I said, I promise they'll show up. So we did it, and the players, it did nothing but inject a tremendous amount of satisfaction and excitement and exhilaration to the players. We got back down in the clubhouse after doing it. The players were so supercharged about getting that close connection with the fans and slapping high fives or giving knuckles. And they were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. So we were up there for like 30 minutes. I can't believe that many fans were piling in the doors of the opening of the Sapporo Dome for opening day here in the 2004 season. That it was things like that. And we did autograph signings and we did book readings at elementary schools and just things that nobody in Japan did at that time. And it was very, very popular, and it got even more popular to go out of bounds in that culture during the strike year, the first and only strike that they've ever had. And that's a whole nother story, but I've talked too long.
Yeah, don't talk too long. It's fine.
It's okay. We're all here to see you this time. So, what were the biggest surprises about how the Japanese baseball operates, like in comparison to American organizations, front office stuff, and player stuff?
Well, I think, well, it was unique for me because obviously the owner could trump me on decisions, but I was hardline on being able to control the roster. So typically, even in Japan, I think more often than not nowadays, and maybe even back then, I don't have any statistics, but I think the general managers in some organizations could trump the manager on roster moves. I collaborated. I had 2 different general managers. Both of them were unbelievably great, and both of them were actually polar opposites. So 2 different, very different types of personalities. One was probably more hard-headed than me, the second one. The first one was, yep, I think that's a good idea. And he would have ideas of his own and would show those. So there was great collaboration. Probably one of the biggest differences on field that I saw immediately was the cultural acceptance of disrespect toward umpires. In a country that is extremely respectful, I was shocked when I saw opposition shortstop shove a home plate umpire because he didn't like a call and didn't get thrown out of the game. So I was like, and that happened in my first year, and I was like, whoa, didn't see that one coming. So I met with the coaching staff, and I met with our organizational heads, and I told them, I said, that's unacceptable behavior in my opinion, and I need everyone to know right now that that's unacceptable behavior for anyone that plays with the Fighters organization. So that will never happen on my watch. And I met with the umpires the next day, and I said, I'm not trying to be judgmental towards your culture or your society, but what happened yesterday with the opposition players disrespectful. And if any of our players are ever disrespectful to you and I happen to not see it, I need to know about it. So I wasn't judging anybody. I just said that's not the way the Fighters are going to do it. And I need to go on record and say that right now. So
In hindsight, that might have been easier that it's an opposition player doing it and not one of your own players, right? It's like you don't then have to make an example out of that guy, in front of the rest of the team, or sort of, it's an opposition player, so it's easier to talk about that, I presume. But how do you sort of handle that initial language barrier, though? Because I've been to Japan a few times and I've struggled my way through making really reasonable orders at a restaurant. But how do you handle that, especially sort of in game situations where, of course you've got your interpreter, but then to make sure that it's really what you're trying to say is being relayed to a player?
Well, I'm glad you hit on that point because it's a couple of there are several. First of all, Toshi Shimada, who was the director, but when our relationship started, he was the interpreter that was coming to America. So we became fast friends.
Okay.
Then when I got recruited over there, it was the president Tak Kojima and Toshi Shimada that were leading the ownership group and saying, "Hey, we got to make a drastic change. We got to bring this particular foreigner in to get this job done for us." Then came Kenichi Iwamoto, who was my interpreter for 5 years, and he was unbelievable. I mean, he is still to this day now, he's one of their vice presidents, and he's my main go-to guy with my consulting business. We communicate pretty regularly, and also with the American international scouts that are here stateside. But Kenichi very quickly adapted and adjusted to my very narrow focus of here's my objectives and this is what we've got to do to get the plan implemented. And Jasper, you hit on the word, and it's a major buzzword, but it's a process. Now with the process, how fast can you take it? So I had Toshi Shimada in the front office, and then my new general manager, Misawa-san, we were developing a relationship, and it was very easy to do with him. And then Tak Kojima, our president, and then the owner, Okoso-san. So that hierarchy I had a great relationship with, and I tried to make sure my communication was very effective. Well, to make that very effective, you've got to have your lifeline, and your lifeline is your interpreter. So Ken and I spent so much time together. It was guesstimated, and we still talk about it occasionally, but Toshi Shimada, my bench coach, Kazuki Shirai, who had come over and done a year sabbatical with the New York Yankees, so we got to know each other, and his English skills were okay. And then Ken Iwamoto, who is now vice president and was my interpreter. We guesstimated that at our first 2 to 3 spring trainings in those first 3 years, we guesstimated that we probably averaged maybe 3, maybe 4 hours of sleep at night during Okinawa. And I was up usually by 4:30 after our last midnight meeting, and with film crews and still photographers following me on my morning jog in
That's
the wee
crazy.
hours of Okinawa. So we put in a ton of hours, and Ken Iwamoto is one of the best workers that I've ever been around in my life, and one of the most polite and great baseball minds that I've ever worked with. And I actually stay in touch with all those people, still trade Christmas cards with the president, Tak Kojima, every year, and just wonderful people. By far the best group, and all the groups I've worked with have been great, but
Yeah.
the fighters above and beyond all the rest.
I mean, 2003 is 2004 your first year there?
3.
2003 was the first
Three
year.
in
So
3 in Tokyo, and then 4, 5, 6.
4, 5, 6, and all right.
4, 5, 6, and 7 was in Hokkaido.
Yes. And you guys, 2006, it comes to fruition. You guys take the championship after 25 years, no championship or anything. So, I mean, were you surprised it took that little of time? Once you got that championship, were you like, all right, we did it? Like, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here for. Like, I got them where they want to be, Like that was the goal. Yeah. How was that decision-making process after the fact? And then take us through when it really clicked for your boys that like the change happened. Like, wow, like we're doing it now.
Yeah, think I think the excitement of the new franchise on the island of Hokkaido, I think that's when we really started to gain our steam.
Mm-hmm.
You know, '03 was Tokyo, and then '04, I think I messed the dates up. Yeah, I did, Dave. '02 was the Rangers. '03 was in Tokyo, then
Yeah.
4,
No, you
5,
got that
6
right.
is
That was right.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I didn't know if you were in 2003. I was confused if you had accepted the job and started in 2004. That's what I was confused about.
Yeah. So the first year of management, but after that 2004 season, we started gaining some steam.
Yeah.
And they came to me and asked me about Tsuyoshi Shinjjo. Shinjjo coming back from America and
Yeah.
some of the
Just
things
a
that go
legend. Just the legend Shinjjo.
right. And there's a lot that comes with Shinjjo, and he's the Fighters manager now. And
Yeah. He's
You know all
awesome.
about him.
yeah, he's dynamic and he's eccentric.
Yeah. I mean, when you played against him, you were like, gosh, that guy looks like a movie star. You know, it didn't
Yeah.
look like he was managing a baseball team. He had his Shinjjo jerseys. And yeah, it looked like he was a movie star, a celebrity. But the boys play behind him, you know, like they try. They play behind him.
And
So he's doing something right.
he's a master marketer.
Yeah.
I
yeah.
mean, he's incredible. But they asked me what I thought about bringing Shinjjo on, and I said, man, I've got no problem with that as long as he's going to be a good teammate and be a good component, and he's going to play in the middle of our field. He was our starting center fielder, and he had a lot of good baseball quality attributes, but he also had a lot of great characteristic attributes that a lot of people still don't get to see because he's caught sometimes in that quagmire of being the rock star
Yeah.
or becoming the championship manager. And when I took this consulting job in 2003, when I started my company and the Fighters hired me, they were actually the first entity that hired me. And I was in spring training, and Shinjjo and I were standing in center field with no interpreter. And I asked him a very difficult question, and this is another point in leadership. I think the best leaders of anything ask the right questions at the right time to get buy-in. And I'm not saying that I did, but it was an important question for me to ask him. And I told him, okay, I'm a Texan, and a little bit about what Texans are about. We're proud, and we ride horses, and we have guns, all the stuff. So I said, I'm trying to help you understand this. If I put a gun to your head and made you answer this from your soul, from your heart posture, if you had a choice, would you rather be Shinjjo the rock star, bigger than the Beatles, or would you rather be Shinjjo the championship manager? Zero hesitation, he said. Yusho, championship manager, man. No hesitation. And it was a quick question, and I knew that there was perfect understanding. And I'm just myself, so I can joke around with Shinjjo about being a rock star because I could care less. I don't care if Shinjjo thinks I'm cool or not. He always respected me. I knew about all of the side shows with the exception of one, and he was great. I mean, great to his teammates, and they loved him because when he did a sideshow, he figured out a way to almost always to incorporate his teammates with him as part of the show. And the show was all for the fans. So his heart, was it attention for him? Yes. But it was an entertainment outside the game of baseball for the fan base. And they absolutely still, I mean, he's...
Still. I mean, I think the best players, the best managers, they find ways to connect with the fans, right? Like, you don't want to be just like that untouchable person who no one can relate to, and it's just like the face on TV. Like, it's just nice. I felt like I always tried to, I mean, now I'm not at the Shinjjo level, but I always tried to communicate with fans, talk to the fans, do some yakiniku power with the fans when I got to see them out and about, Shinjo's next level. But I feel like your career is going to end at some point. And it's like, what did you leave behind? Was it just you played baseball well, or did you connect with people, and did people enjoy being around you? And I hope that everyone that I played with and everyone that people, I mean, I know everyone that Trey coached felt the same way about Trey. So there's more to baseball than just being a decent baseball player or a decent manager.
Amen. Yeah, it all goes back to the core of building relationships.
Yeah, 100%.
And I tell people the things that you're attributing that feed your soul, that's exactly what it is. It's soul food.
Yeah.
It's soul food in loving people and building those relationships in the right way. And that's the real blessing. Now, unfortunately, especially through my Yankee years in development, I had the unfortunate job of ending guys' careers, giving them the announcement, and it's and a lot of ex-players stay in touch, which is a real blessing for me. And they miss the game, yes, but they miss the relationships more.
I agree with that part for sure. I agree. You miss being in the clubhouse, meeting new people, growing relationships with teammates and fans and coaches more than I miss the actual game. The game is frustrating. The game's not always fun. Your body hurts. The game's not always fun, but the relationships and just the day out on the golf course with the boys, like just different things to build relationships. That was the most fun part of baseball.
Yeah, and I think that was encapsulated. Our son-in-law and our daughter started a little company called Baseball is Fun, and he had hit a walk-off base hit in the World Series in Game 4 against the Dodgers in 2020.
That's that Brett Phillips?
Yes, that guy. But he was actually
flying around,
actually almost hyperventilating. They had to rehydrate him and with an IV. And during the interview, that was the first thing that popped out. He said, "Baseball is fun." And then they started coming out with these shirts and hats and stuff. But
that was awesome.
In him saying that and expressing that, it encapsulates for him, I know, it encapsulates the relational part. And it's, I think it's the greatest game that God ever designed for mankind to get to play. I think it's
for sure
emulates life more than any other sport does.
Any other sport.
It's a grind.
Such a grind.
But it is a grind, yeah.
It is a grind.
Hey, talking about that championship, because I feel like you're the type of character that will immediately...
Yeah, he's underselling it, man. He's underselling it.
You'll credit everyone else, great coaches around me, good GM, they believed in me, they gave me autonomy. But, I mean, talk to me about that championship, though, because 25 years without a championship. Now, I support some teams that will probably go a lifetime without a championship. I'm very
like
keen
the Marlins.
The Miami Marlins, one of my teams. The New York Jets is the other. So I'm destined for failure every year, but that's fine. I like rooting for underdogs.
Another good game out of the Jets yesterday.
Anyway, don't talk about that. It's no mean feat. Every fan dreams of their team winning a championship one day. One day we'll win a championship. You actually were able to bring that to the people of Hokkaido, in this case, the Fighters fans that have been around in Japan. How monumentous is that? How big is that for you? And take some credit, please.
Well, I remember sharing this with my wife, and we share everything. She's just a wonderful, wonderful soul. And I told her, I said, with our faith and where God has us after the 2006 championship, I told her, I said, from a work standpoint, where God has blessed me to get to work in professional baseball, if I never spend one day at the major league level and for whatever reason God decides, hey, I need you up in heaven rather than here on earth, I said, I feel totally fulfilled and am so incredibly appreciative of having been a part and been a leader of putting in a new plan and then the players blessing us with the championship. Now, having said that, there are definite parallels with that 2006 championship team and the 2018 Korean KBO championship team. In both situations, we were heavily underdogs. In Japan, it was against the Chunichi Dragons and Ochiai-san. We had very different personalities. But honestly, man for man, talent pool-wise, we were pretty well overmatched. And then the same thing happened in 2018 in the KBO. The first place team, we had finished in second. First place team finished 12 and a half games ahead of us
Wow.
in the KBO race. And the reason they did is because they were probably 15 games better than us. In both situations, it goes back to the core root of what we continue to go back to. Our guys actually, in both situations and on the teams that I was blessed to manage, we had higher character. And they cared about each other more than the opposition teams did. And they played as a team more. They loved each other more. They worked together more. In Korea in 2018, my interpreter continued to tell me, he said, Trey, the opposing manager is still waiting for you. We were on their home field at Olympic Stadium in Seoul celebrating our KBO championship. And I told Men Kim, my interpreter, I said, Men, I really appreciate him waiting for me, but I'm not going to miss these precious moments with these guys that just won this. And the celebration lasted for about an hour and 15 minutes, along with the presentation of the trophy. And because we won the championship, I got the manager trophy and all this stuff. And then we addressed our fans that had come from our hometown. And an hour and 30 minutes later, he's still standing in the same spot waiting to get to talk to me. So we jog over, and his question was just transparent and impactful. After congratulating me, he asked me the question, and he said, how did you do that? And I thought, wow, that's a really big question. I took a deep breath, and I very politely as I could, I told him the truth. And I said, well, I think that our players know how to play together better than your players do. And he agreed, and he kind of nodded up and down after that was translated. And I said, you have an incredibly great team. Congratulations on a great year. But I'm really proud of our guys because I think they do a really great job of playing for each other.
Yeah.
From a player's perspective, David, what does that fully entail? Like, I know you and I have talked about managers that you like playing for, guys that you don't know, it doesn't need to be like run through a brick wall type of guy, but it's like you just like playing for the guy. But what does that actually mean in the sort of day-to-day operations? Like, do you run a bit harder for the guy, or do you swing harder?
No, I think it's more just like it makes a good manager makes it a little bit more fun for the players to play together. They create an environment where practice is fun. When you're off the field, on the road, they do things with the team. So now you're getting closer to people that you might not get closer to. So now you have a different sort of comfort level when you're on the field with each other. Really has nothing to do with the baseball aspect of it. It's not like when I'm hitting a ground ball, like I don't run any less hard for someone I don't particularly like to someone I do particularly like, because that's my career, you know? But I think the more comfortable you can get as a player, I know for me, the faster I got comfortable, the faster I started playing a little bit better. And if you can get an entire team to get comfortable, all of a sudden, everyone's playing a little bit more free, and then it's easier to win games when everyone's playing a little bit more free. I think that's kind of what happened last year when I was with the Lions. They were super tight, and it's definitely hard to. Now, it doesn't always come from the staff to loosen it up. That's the players, and the players we did a good job of loosening everybody up, and we went from, I think, 9th to 2nd last year, and it was just the same players pretty much. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely if you can create an environment where everyone feels comfortable and wants to have fun, I think that's kind of the difference of those good teams and the just talented teams that aren't playing free and aren't playing together.
And then pivoting back to Trey, what's your number one thing to get? Because you've entered quite a few locker rooms, and I mean, sometimes I can imagine you can just, not that the tension's written on the wall, but you can just feel that it's not fully performing perhaps to the ability that they could. A team is not getting the best out of themselves, maybe. But what's your number one thing to make sure that at least some sort of basic level of camaraderie exists, and then obviously you try and go from there?
Well, I think Dave just exactly what he said, honestly, and not to try to get more plugs in for baseball is fun, but all of my plan and the structure of my plan that I wanted to implement in Japan and that we also implemented it in Korea. And I did a poor job of implementing it in Kansas City. I took on a lot of pressure that I didn't need to take on. I didn't keep it as fun in Kansas City as I should have. But I remember meeting with Ken, my interpreter, about mid-season of the first year, and I'm trying to get this into the plan and this into the plan, make sure this is done right and communicated the right way, and make sure that all the pieces of putting the new structure and the new process, getting it going. And I said, hey, listen, for the rest of this year, we have but one objective. I'm going to simplify everything that we're doing. I want these guys every morning they wake up, they cannot wait to get to the field because it's so fun. And that was it.
Yeah.
I remember when I decided to put a ping pong table in the clubhouse in Hokkaido. I think it was the third year. They were like, wow, how do we do this? I had two leader players come in to my office and say, how do we do this? I said, what do you mean? How do you do? You guys, Japanese are great playing ping pong, you know? It's known around the world. Japanese, Chinese, Asians are great at pong, man. I said, play ping pong. And I said, now are you asking me when you should play and when you should stop, or what are you asking me? I said, it's your clubhouse. And I said, I'll give you some guidelines as recommendations. Then you guys decide. So I let them have ownership of it. They actually went with exactly what my suggestions were, but they
obviously
they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
It was another component of fun, but the other thing that I think is really important, and I think Dave will attest to this too, I care about Dave. I care about what's going on in his life. If I'm going to be living with him day in, day out, I want to know about his wife. I want to know about his children. In Japan, we made sure, in Korea too, but in Japan, we made sure the players knew I wanted their moms and dads and aunts and uncles and wives and children at the ballpark.
Yeah.
That was unheard of.
Yeah, no, it's still not happening as much as you would like there.
So how do you counter that? We countered it with a family day. This is our family day. This is the day at our ballpark we honor our families. The families came out for the work day, watched what we did. After the game, dads were out there playing with their kids on the field, and moms and dads walking around. Staff guys getting to know them, and front office people coming out and welcoming them at the ballpark. And you have to take baby steps. You know, some people weren't comfortable with it, but they got comfortable with it.
So, I mean, obviously you said that. Also, you said you didn't bring the vibes, I guess you would have liked to bring to Kansas City. What did you learn with your stint in Kansas City, and what do you think the Japanese and Korean baseball could adopt a little bit more from maybe how the American teams operate?
Well, I think that the American teams, well, first of all, what I learned in Kansas City, I worked for some incredible people in Kansas City as well. One of my best friends in the game was the guy that hired me, Dayton Moore. We don't talk often, but when we do, there's always deep substance to it. Dayton always said something, and he said it a lot, and he meant it, and he still means it to this day. First of all, Dayton's got a faith base, and we align on our faith. But he's an incredible dad. His son's a AAA player with the Phillies. But Dayton always said this. He said, Trey, we're going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Now, that sounds really simple, but think about how we're built morally and how we're aligned with our faith system and what God's word says. That was an incredible boss to get to work for because I knew morally we were always going to align.
Yeah.
Almost precisely. In Kansas City, I learned about myself. I learned that I was taking my process too seriously and too quickly
Mm.
on the heels of having been successful in another culture. And I get this question a lot. People say, man, how in the world were you so successful in Asia and Korea and Japan and winning championships? And I just go straight to self-deprecating and say, it's really simple. They couldn't understand a single word I said, so they just did whatever they wanted to do. But, you know, the best way I would say it with a Texas analogy is I came into Kansas City in every aspect, still wanting to love people. There was no doubt I wanted to love people, but I came in with my guns too hot. I came in guns ablazing, and whoa, now I'm back in my culture. Whoa, now I can understand everything that's being said.
Yeah.
I'm hearing everything that's being said. I had some of the most flaming things said to me in my home dugout from our home fans in Kansas City that I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
And I should have looked at that as a good thing. These people are so passionate. They want to win, and they want to win now. But I let that affect me negatively too much, and that affected my personality in building the culture
Yeah.
as quickly as I wanted to with you, the player, and with us in the clubhouse, and probably with my coaching staff, although I had incredible coaches and an incredible front office, and I loved the players for the most part. We had a couple of knuckleheads, but every team does. So
I mean, every team's got a
We all,
Dave.
yeah. I was one of the knuckleheads.
you're a good knucklehead, though.
I am a good knucklehead. It's the only reason I stuck around for so long.
We need to put that on a t-shirt. Good knucklehead. Yeah.
Good knucklehead.
But also flipping that, Trey, is there, because obviously the games greatly differ. The games that are currently being played in the MPB, they're nothing like, or they're still baseball, but my introduction to it was it's baseball, but it's just the game's obviously managed completely differently. There's less power involved, partly due to the baseballs being quite flattened and they don't fly so great, but it's just two vastly different games. But what can MLB organizations really take away from the things that are done well in Japan and in Korea? I'll give you one example. I think for me, the way that pitchers field their position, they rarely get an error. They rarely get a mistake throwing it to first. If I watch MLB, on the other hand,
They
I'll
rarely
likely
make
see-
the play.
they rarely make the play. Yeah, if I see a reliever come in and he'll struggle, he'll throw 99, but he'll struggle to get it in a straight line to first base. So it's sort of fundamental baseball seems much more sound to a degree in Japan and in Korea. But what's your sort of view on what the US style of baseball could learn from the Asian style of baseball?
Well, you just hit on it, Jasper. Agility. Agility and all-inclusive agility, position players as well as pitchers. Also flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't have what we called stretch in Japan. We had CC, which was called conditioning check. And I would see players at the Sapporo Dome. I would go out from my office and look to see who was out there a full hour before conditioning check. And you'd see guys in groups of 2, sometimes by themselves, sometimes in groups of 3, maybe 4, but they were working on body parts, conditioning, and preparing their entire body for the conditioning check. And then conditioning check was 15 to 17 minutes of some of the greatest agility work I've ever seen in my life. And that was daily. And by the end of conditioning check, everybody was beated up and warmed up with sweat. I mean, just sweat pouring out of their pores. And it wasn't straight sprints. It was footwork. It was change of direction. It was body control.
Yeah.
It was from the ground up. And that could be definitely turned up here in the United States. And then there's things that the United States have taken from the Japanese game. I'll never forget the first time I saw a post-game interview with the stage down on the field in Japan. I thought, wow, this is different. Now we're doing it in a lot of American ballparks. Player of the game with the microphone, talking to the fans. So I think there's always things that we can gravitate to, but the agility and one specific position is, especially in the center of the field, is catcher. Flexibility with the catchers. Most of them in Japan are still on both feet rather than the knee down. That puts them in a better position. I will argue this till the day I die. better positioned laterally to get to more misfires and block balls and keep base runners from moving up 90 feet than we do here in the United States. So, and overall, the outfield arms are better.
Accurate and strong.
Accurate and strong. And there were a lot of times in Japan, I would bring this back to the United States, and I even toyed with coaching staffs in the United States at the major league level. If the outfielder hits the cutoff man rather than the double cut, there's no need for the double cut. There were a lot of times we didn't run double cuts in the right center and left center gap in Japan.
No,
it was just one.
They still
one
don't
guy
do it
out.
that much, yeah. And even sometimes they'll hit like a shortstop cut home instead of hitting the third base cut.
That is much more efficient. Third baseman stays home, runner on second base hit to left. Shortstop's already there. Even if he went after the ball backhand, he can still get back, be the cutoff man to home plate. Keeps the batter runner from going from home to second.
Yeah.
And it's a quicker transition.
That was definitely a different one, for sure.
Yeah,
I'd never seen it before.
I tried to get that implemented on 3 different major league staffs, and it got shot down. So
I like that one, though. What about the daily hitting and fielding? Like, not just the conditioning and flexibility.
I think I was amazed at how long Japanese hitters could maintain their balance with that many swings consecutively in batting practice rounds and at higher velocity pitching. But we've gotten better in the United States with the higher velocity because a lot of teams will use the high velocity machines now.
Mm-hmm.
I still believe in the dead arm, which is not so dead with the Japanese BP pitchers because they're all former pitchers.
Yeah.
I think the machines has upped our game a little bit to get guys more ready for the velocity that they're going to see instead of just show BP, watch how many home runs I can hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think baseball is gonna keep evolving, right? It's never gonna fully come to a standstill. You know, you see certain, even the Central League in Japan getting rid of the DH, or sorry, implementing the DH, or getting rid of pitchers hitting, which I don't think anyone likes to see. So, I mean, that's it's just gonna change, and even in Japan and in Korea. I do want to briefly touch on your experience in Korea because I know you compared the 2 championship teams, but 12 years between your first championship and your second Asian championship. Just want to point out that you were the first foreign manager to win the Korean series, like, ever.
It's unbelievable. Like,
that's
the crazy thing is, when I met Trey, I didn't even know he was like God's gift to baseball in Asia. It's just so funny that. Yeah, it's just funny.
It's no biggie. Just winning titles wherever he goes, staying humble throughout, though. So he's not gonna take credit for this question. Like, don't worry, like people listening, don't worry, he's not gonna take credit. But I do want to know, how does Korean baseball sort of fit into this? I feel like for me, I've got a pretty good view on what the Japanese game is. Korea just seems a mix of the two, but it's more inclined towards power. Or what's your sort of view on the differences between all those different? Because when I talk to friends and non-baseball friends, and they're like, baseball is just baseball, right? What do you mean it's different in Korea and Japan? I'm like, okay, let's sit down and talk for half an hour. But how do you explain that question?
It's a really good question, Jasper. It all boils down to commitment to discipline. The Japanese player overall, I hate putting cultures in a bucket or people in a bucket, but overall, the Japanese player is much more committed with their preparation, their diet, their rest, and their regiment to be the best that they can be on the field every day.
They are.
To a point where in August of 2017, my first year in Korea, I met with my strength and conditioning guy early August, and we still had August and September. And then if we made the playoffs, which we did, but we lost out in the first round, I sat down with him and I gave him almost a 2-month period to come up with ideal body weights for every player in our system. And I had him communicate to the minor league strength and conditioning guy, because the way that I told our strength and conditioning guy, I said, look, our coaching staff looks better in a uniform than our players do. So and I said, here's the deal. I've covered this with you. I'm going to let our team know. I'll be the bad guy, but you need to reinforce this. anyone is not within their 5 pounds of their ideal body weight by the time the plane leaves Korea to come and have the first 3 weeks of spring training at Vero Beach, Florida, old Dodger Town, which is where we trained, they're not getting on the flight. And that's my decision, and I have the authority to do that. So we worked on body comp. So body comp is a big thing. And obviously, with worse body comp, the feet and the agility don't work as well. So we needed better body composition, which we got. And it made a huge difference for the way that we played, especially defensively. The game in Korea is more power related, similar to the way that the United States is. And they're getting better, but there's less power pitching. Now, having said that, Merrill Kelly was one of my starters in my 2 years there, and he came back to the Arizona Diamondbacks and now trade deadline Texas Rangers. He's one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
And he just keeps evolving year after year after year. I mean, 2019 to 2025, the guy just keeps getting better. So there's really good pitching over there, but not as much of good pitching going through a rotation, especially with starters. And there's a lack of the power arms coming out of the bullpen.
Yeah.
You also see less range, and you also see less precision to the field compositions. I mean, the fields, they're nice. They're not as good as the fields in Japan, and certainly not as good as the fields in the United States as far as manicuring, and especially those that are not AstroTurf. You only have one AstroTurf field in all of Korea. So it makes a difference playing that many games on natural surface rather than artificial turf, especially when it comes to ability to get the balls, take the right angles and range.
Yeah. Well, you had to manage foreigners, obviously. So you had to manage, I guess, your own, could be Dominican, could be Venezuelan, could be American. What was your feelings of managing in Korea when it came to the foreigners? Because I might be biased, but there's a slightly quicker leash in Korea than there is in Japan in regards to foreigners. So, could you just elaborate on that?
A lot of counseling, and that happened in Japan as well. I mean, I saw quickly, I was in Japan at the same time with Bobby Valentine, but I have a ton of respect for Bobby V, and he's always treated me exceptionally well. But I guess maybe because I was a little bit younger, it seemed like I became the guidance counselor for opposition foreigners, and they would huddle around me behind the cage, which brought my foreigners over, and it was like, hey, we're having a foreign reunion here.
Yeah.
Same thing happened in Korea. I got pretty close with a lot of the foreign players on other teams. You're walking a fine line there because you don't want to overstep. It's not my job to manage them. But at the same time, it is my job to try to be a good human being and try to help people, not beat my team, but just try to help them emotionally and survive in a foreign land.
Yeah.
My particular foreigners, I was so blessed with the guys that I had. I mean, I had Merrill Kelly, whom I've already mentioned, but I also had Jamie Romack. And Jamie had a cup of coffee in the big leagues here, and he's a Canuck. He's from the Toronto area, and he was incredible. And I had a couple of other guys sprinkled in, but those two guys really, really had a lot of respect for the country. They didn't like the umpiring so much, more so with Jamie than with Merrill. There was more counseling that went on with his strike zone as a hitter, more so than what Merrill Kelly had as a pitcher. But Merrill Kelly had 2 years previous to me getting there. So he had already kind of established his relationship and his respect level with the umpires and with the rest of the league and his teammates as well. So I tried to make sure that we integrated as much of that as we could with the homelanders of Korea, and anytime I wanted to bust on one of the foreigners in front of the group just to have a little fun, I would make sure several interpreters, the players' interpreters and my interpreter and the foreign players knew what was going on before I'd bust on them in front of the nationals. You know? So, and it was just good. It was good food for fodder.
I think it would have been awesome to be able to have a foreign manager. Like you guys are kind of both going through the same thing, but you can talk to somebody of the higher power, something because you're just as a foreign player, you're kind of like, I don't know. The manager over there is like the head honcho. No one really talks to them.
Right.
Like, or at least if they're Japanese or if they're Korean, no one's really talking to them. It's just like they make the decision. You just respect it and you move on. So even the foreigners kind of take that, I guess, view on the manager where they're untouchable. And so it would have been cool to have. Well, shit, it would have been. If Trey was my manager over there, I might still be playing. You know.
Well, that's touching on a good point though, actually, because weren't you a special assistant with the Angels too, Trey?
Special agent too.
Special agent Trey Hillman, yeah, that's a sweet title. But you were a special assistant with the Angels. Well, one Mr. David McKinnon was coming up through the ranks. Did you? I mean, you two must have met during that time, but maybe you actually saw him play a bit. Can we get your scouting report on David?
Yeah, when I initially saw Dave swing, I thought it was a little long, and I wasn't sure it was going to play.
Well, it didn't really play.
And no, it did play. It did play, and I was actually quite impressed offensively with his timing mechanism, because as far as pure raw bat speed, it's not somebody that you look at and you go, whoa, wow, from point B to contact point C, but it was the A to B that really gave him the opportunity to be a major league player and to continue to play as long as he did. This is just my assessment. But the timing mechanism from his start or his setup to his load position, and then his lack of hesitation in what his eyes are reading or with pitches to offer at, that wasn't going to have a lot of improvement as far as velocity from B to C. He really was really good at A to B, touchdown, front foot, and then the commit to swing and the timing of that. He fooled me on that because I didn't know if that was going to play when I first saw him in batting practices and in spring training games when I saw him. But he was intriguing, and honestly, just not trying to pump Dave up, your teammate
No,
here
you
on
can keep
this,
pumping me up.
It's fine to pump Dave up. We do it all the time.
Yeah, I mean,
Great.
he's got a very vivacious personality. He's a free spirit, but he keeps it very real, and he's transparent enough to expose himself. And sometimes he just allows things to come right out of his mouth that jump into his brain. And then other times you see him take a pause and process and say, okay, wait a minute, how do I want to word this? Those are some of the characteristics that I noticed, but also noted just the joy of the work ethic. You can't be a champion and you can't really be a really good teammate unless you're going to walk the walk.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, every day he came out the field, spring training, when I saw him during the season, he was the same guy. I could tell when he was a little bit down. Almost all position players are a little bit down when they're not hitting. If they're hitting, there's always a lot lighter personality and more atmosphere and more glow to them.
Yeah.
It's a natural part of the game. But even on the darker days, it was still okay. I'm just gotta grind. I'm gonna grind. He's a grinder.
Had to be.
I would take 20. I used to say 25. Now it's 26. I would take 26 grinders. I've said this my whole career. I would take 26 grinders than 20 grinders and 6 first-round draft choices all tooled up in a nanosecond. I would take more starting pitchers that could change speeds and locate 100 times over 5 guys that lit the gun up and gave me all the analytics. Because over the course of fighting that war that I referred to earlier, losing a couple of battles to win the war, you're going to win the war. And I'll take that consistency. The 162 game grind or 144 in Asia or whatever the number is, that many games, I'm going to take consistency. And Dave was very, very consistent during my time getting to watch him and be around him. And you can't ask for anything more. I would have loved to have managed you, Dave. We would have had a lot of fun.
We would have had a fun time.
Yeah, I would have blasted on you a couple times, but
yeah,
you would have gotten over it.
I would have. I probably would have been blasting on myself as you blasted on.
I mean, the self-deprecation levels that would have been going on would have been.
And we're
like,
pretty similar in regards to that.
Yeah.
I
Gotta
remember
keep it
one of
real.
the first things Trey, in spring training, I had slow feet, and that had always been kind of part of my problem. I could field the ball really well, but like I'd always played first, So we were doing this like throwing drill, and it was like kind of a get the ball out of your glove, get the ball moving. And Trey said, I don't know if it was like slow or like no or whatever you were saying, but you said something, and then I finally got it right, and I was like, oh, that's what it's supposed to feel like? Like I had never felt that before,
Oh, it was the play catch drill.
Yeah,
Play
it was
catch
like,
drill.
but we had like a circle going, and whenever the ball came to me, you're like, no, slow. It's too slow. I think it was with my feet, though. My feet just weren't ready. Yeah, late. And I was like, damn it, Trey, I don't know. When is it right? I've never felt this before. And then when I did it right, I was like, oh, that's what it's supposed to feel like. But no one's explained certain things to me before,
Well, Dave, you just hit on a great point. And Jasper, I think this is worthy of your podcast for people that are baseball fans. The guys that do it the best, if they can't feel it, they have no idea how to repeat it. So, and there's nothing more true than syncing up your lower half with your upper half, whether it's throwing or whether it's utilization of your lower half in a swing to impact the ball with the highest velocity you can. Dave just said it perfectly. I've never felt it the right way before. So, even at his advanced part that I got to see him at when we met in 2022, he's an advanced minor league player at that point, and then he becomes a big leaguer. There are things, that's how come guys got to keep remembering, man, there's always something to learn. But the guys that do it, if they can't feel it, they don't have any idea how to repeat it.
Actually, I think that could be true for a lot of things in life. I don't think that
no doubt.
that just correlates to baseball, because I edit a lot of videos, so I've got a sort of muscle memory in the way that I do certain things, and I know when it's right. I feel when it's right, and it's sort of, and you almost know sometimes when you start a video. You start with a bunch of different files, so you never know where it's going to go, right? But somehow and it starts clicking.
Actually, I have no idea what you're talking
Dave,
about.
you have no idea what I'm talking about. But you feel it. You do feel it. You feel when it's right. You feel when you're doing the right things, and you know what it's going to accumulate to. So I feel like that's probably a lesson that even the non-baseball player listeners, which hopefully there are plenty, will understand. I know we've talked a lot about the past, Trey, so we can talk about the present a little bit more. You mentioned your consultancy, and you mentioned that you're now obviously still working with the fighters. You go and visit them in spring training. Is that still under the name special assistant, or is that under a what do you call yourself when you introduce yourself?
I think they call him Cowboy Hillman.
Cowboy Hillman coming over and sorting out the team.
I'm just a consultant.
Just a consultant. Okay.
Yeah. It's the name of the company is Hillman Double Play Consulting LLC, and the reason I chose that is because there's no more. I've always really, really been into defense, the defensive part of the game, and run prevention. And I was primarily a shortstop as a player, but I was a utility man and played multiple positions. And there's no more powerful play in the game of baseball than one pitch and 2 outs that happens with any regularity. And I've had the argument that the triple play is more powerful, which obviously it is, but you typically only see out of a 162 game season 1 or 2 of those
one
a
or
year.
two. Yeah.
It's anything that happens with frequency that's by far the most powerful, and it can be the most debilitating toward the opposition's offensive momentum. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's why I named it that, Hillman Double Play Consulting, and I just try to help. I do a lot of stuff for people that are not clients. So we've got a facility on our back 3 acres here. It's a major league sized turf infield and batting cage, and we've got little leaguers and softballers, and we've donated it to the community for 18 years.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
So our house looks like a parking lot full of cars 6 days out of the week. We have
That's awesome.
people on our back property. So it's just our way of trying to pay it forward and try to bless people with what we've been blessed with, and share some of God's blessings with other people here in the community. And our little town of Liberty Hill, 25 minutes northwest of Austin, is growing exponentially.
Gosh, I might have to come out there. We have to play a round of golf.
Love to have you. I'll take you out to the ranch. Yeah, we'll have some fun.
Don't go playing without me. I'll just hop on a flight.
You
It's
need to
fine. I'll be
practice,
there
dude.
I'll need practice. So where better to practice? Trey can teach me. Like you're not
That's
teaching
true.
me golf.
I'm
so,
not teaching you golf. I'm
Yeah,
taking
Trey's
your
probably
money.
a slightly better teacher when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But
Come on over.
for the fighters, Trey, what is it that you do for them? Because I read a lot about, whether it's US based scouts or in Japan, scouting for teams in the MLB, or the other way around. Scouts obviously working for Japanese teams, trying to sign guys for next year. Do you play any role in that at all, as far as the scout? Because I do know you initially started as a scout too with the Yankees, didn't you?
Oh, with the Indians. Yeah,
Indians,
and then
sorry, yeah.
Yeah, and then the Yankees hired me away and put me on the field. But they don't really need my scouting opinion. Occasionally, we have 3 international scouts with the fighters that are based here in the United States, and they're all exceptionally good. And Brian Sikorsky is the newest member. He pitched in Japan for 12 years. And Randy Smith, the former general manager of the Detroit Tigers and the San Diego Padres, and his lineage, baseball in his family. Tal Smith, the former general manager and president of the Houston Astros years ago. Randy's exceptionally intelligent and has a great mind database for baseball and scouting and evaluation. And then Matt Winters also has been a long-time scout for the Fighters, and actually, I think his first year scouting for the Fighters, it may have been his second year, was the year we won the championship in 2006. So I'm very good friends with those 3 guys, so we correspond on occasion. Try not to bother them. It's kind of like me corresponding with any of my my major league friends now that are still on staffs or managers. I just don't bother them during the season.
Yeah.
If I happen to be going to the ballpark, I'll shoot them a text. I'll either a couple of weeks ago to the Astros Rangers games up at Globe Life in my hometown of Arlington and took the Japanese guys up to that. It's corresponding mainly. I do go to spring training. I'm usually at spring training for anywhere from a week to 10 days in Okinawa.
Mm.
And during that time, one of the things that they asked me to do is sit in on all the coaches' meetings and then give maybe a 5-minute lesson of things that I learned when I was there and things that I see during my work days there on the ground with them. I'm in uniform. I build relationships with foreign players, build relationships with the domestic players, and, do whatever they ask me to do. And then once I get back to the United States, it's just as consistent as we can with the time changes of the 13 or 14 hours, depending on daylight savings time adjustments. Correspond as much as they need, and occasionally they'll ask me for additional information on potential foreign players, either from the scouts or from the front office, which comes directly through my old interpreter, who's now the vice president, Kenichi Iwamoto. And other than that, my other client is Bruce Bolt Batting Glove out of Austin.
They're out of Austin?
Yeah, they're in Austin. Yeah, the CEO is about 25, 26 years old. Wow. Taught him to throw a knuckleball on our field back there when he was like 12 or 13. Huh? We remained friends, and when I got back from Korea, they brought all their prototype stuff over and showed it to me, and then I went back to Korea for the 18 season and won the championship. I got the job for the Marlins back in the big leagues, and so I started passing out Bruce Bolt product all over the big leagues.
Yeah, you got me in my first Bruce Bolt pair.
Yeah, it's caught on quite well for them.
They're awesome.
So it's great. They're a great company with great people.
Yeah. Well, if they want to get into the Japanese markets, they can let us know.
Yeah,
they're actually in.
They're in. They're in.
They sell.
They want to expand their reach in Japan.
If they want,
that's our sales pitch.
That is our sales pitch.
We're still figuring out the sales pitch. A lot of people watching though. That's good.
That is good.
Trey, last question we have for you. Looking back at your entire career, obviously going from the Yankees farm system first a scout with the Indians to winning championships in Japan and Korea. What's the one thing that you're most proud of that people might not know about?
Wow. Just the root blessing of where I came from, the family that I came from. Right now downstairs is my 91-year-old dad, my almost 69-year-old sister who we're helping nurse back from back surgery a couple of weeks ago. And she's lives in Denver, but we're trying to get her stable to be able to make the flight and go back to her life there with her family. And another wonderful sister and my wife's whole side of the family. I mean, we both grew up with incredible, loving families that were faith-based in Christianity. We don't get an opportunity to talk about things like that, so too much, It's usually about this much when you're in the public eye of a managerial or coaching position, and people need to know. I mean, been blessed by how God's blessed us and get to grow up with loving families, and our families intertwine, and it just builds and grows the love between the families, and that's very, very important to us, all faith-based.
Yeah.
Love that. That's a great note to end it on. Trey, thanks so much for giving all your time, your stories, your unique perspective across, 3 different baseball countries, 2 continents. So thank you very, very much.
No, you're welcome, Jasper. It was great to get to visit with you. And Dave, always good to see you, brother.
It's always good to see you too. Everyone listening, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Pacific Swings. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next time. Hit the subscribe button wherever Jasper puts it.
Wherever I put it. Thanks, everyone.